to a special Biota Live. I am Tom Bartley, and this evening I'm going to have the pleasure of talking with a special guest with regards to a special product that they have just produced. Hello, Jon Klein.
Hi, how are you, Tom?
Very good, very good. So I wanted to call this special Biota Live this evening because you have a special announcement for the artificial life community, and also I wanted to talk a little bit about the development that went into this, and also some of your own updates with regards to Breve and Grace. So would you like to announce to the artificial life community why we're holding this special Biota Live?
Sure. So I wanted to talk to you tonight so I could announce the release of the Breve Walker app for the iPhone. It's the original Breve Walker simulation that comes with Breve, and there was once a screensaver for Mac OS X, and it's now available for the iPhone.
And in terms of the logical progression, I recall talking on Floss Weekly probably about 18 months ago about the possibility of you doing Breve Walker for the iPhone. My sense of that came from the fact that you were really even a pre-Apple Development Toolkit developer for the iPhone. You had a wide variety of background knowledge, obviously, with regards to the Mac platform and Cocoa. Can you kind of walk people through the evolution of Breve for the iPhone?
Right. Well, what really led me to do it and take it on right now was the development of Breve had kind of had been on the shelf for a while and had stalled out a little bit because I'm not working in academia right now, and the projects that I had been working on for Breve had sort of trailed off for a while. So bringing out Breve Walker for the iPhone seemed like a sort of fun way for me to get back into Breve development and to bring some of the old code up to date, while working on a cool project. And, as you said, I've been a Mac developer for many years, so it was kind of natural to head in that direction.
I'm asked by a lot of people, both within the artificial life community and outside the artificial life community, about iPhone development. And I similarly have been a long-time Mac developer, but haven't actually developed on the iPhone specifically. For someone who has some background in programming, but not necessarily Mac-related programming skills, can you characterize what they would need to do in order to develop their applications for the iPhone specifically?
Sure. So a lot of people are diving into iPhone development, from scratch, trying to learn Objective-C and the Mac development tools that way. But there are also a lot of great sort of third-party solutions now for people looking to get a jump start into iPhone programming, especially in the area of things like simulation and games. So there are a lot of pretty cool game engines now that run on the iPhone as well as on the Mac and on PC, so you can target any of those platforms. So, for example, Unity or Torque, both of those are great engines that run on the iPhone. So getting up and running with the iPhone development tools from scratch in Objective-C can be daunting for a lot of people, but if you're really interested in simulation and sort of things more oriented, similar to game development, looking at some of those engines is probably a good choice.
And in terms of Android and these kind of technologies, obviously Android is Java-based. Do you get a sense of the Java development community and the access to the iPhone specifically?
Android's an interesting one because all the people I know right now doing mobile app development are sort of waiting to see what happens with the Android platform, specifically in terms of business decisions and making money from it. The iPhone has proven that as a platform that it can get the audience and you can make money from it, but the same thing hasn't happened for Android yet. And in fact, there are plenty of developers out there sort of complaining that they were able to produce hit games on the iPhone when they ported their work to Android. Even though they became one of the top apps, they're making nowhere near what they could on the iPhone. So I think it's only a good thing to have more mobile platforms out there that people can develop for, but as far as commercial development, I think people are sort of waiting to see what happens.
And I mean, in terms of user interface for an existing artificial life developer looking to move their simulation onto something like the iPhone, can you characterize the kind of learning steps that you had moving Breve Walker from the kind of desktop environment? And I mean, for people not familiar with Breve Walker, perhaps it would be a good idea to kind of give a background to what it looked like when you ran it on a Mac or a Windows machine versus what it looks like now on the iPhone.
Sure. So to take a step further back, I'll just give a quick description of what Breve Walker really is. So Breve Walker is sort of an artificial intelligence experiment that was originally distributed as part of the Breve simulation environment. It's inspired by Sims Creature's work, but it's sort of a more simplified version. And it's basically a simulated robot where the body of the robot is fixed, unlike Sims' work, but it learns to walk using a genetic algorithm. On desktop computers, Breve is this whole simulation environment that you can open up the code for all these simulations. You can tweak things, you can run them, and you sort of interact with the simulation in real time. For the iPhone, it is a little bit different because of some of the user interface limitations. So for the iPhone, it's really more, it's a little bit less interactive, and it's really more sort of a demonstration of what a genetic algorithm is and how it can be used to evolve locomotion in these creatures. So it's less about tinkering with the robot and making changes to it, and it's more about showing people how genetic algorithms and how artificial life works.
And the Breve source code has always been open source. Is the iPhone development portion also open source?
With some very minor exceptions, yeah. So the Breve source code for the main engine is completely open source. The specifics of the application wrapper around it have not been open sourced yet, but it's pretty trivial work, the part that's not open sourced.
We haven't actually had an opportunity to chat with you on Biota Live specifically, Jon, so it must have been at least 18 months since our last conversation. In terms of the local artificial life community in Boston, I think last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about Grey Thumb. Can you characterize what's going on currently in Boston, and can you talk a little bit about what's going on currently with Grey Thumb specifically?
Sure. So Grey Thumb, as people may know, it's a group in Boston. We meet up about once a month to discuss artificial life and related topics. Usually the format is that we have a speaker, and then people stick around for drinks and conversations. I guess we've been doing it for about 2 years in that format, and a little bit longer than that, just sort of more as a casual get-together of people. The past couple of months, we actually haven't had meetings just due to all sorts of things involving people's schedules and finding speakers. But we are right now in the process of putting together a couple of great new speakers and we have a couple of people interested who do artificial intelligence and artificial life in games and that sort of thing. And Brian Peltonen, who's our president and one of our organizers, he's doing a great job of putting together some speakers for the next couple of months.
Terrific. Certainly when we have Bruce Damer on and people that are part of the Grey Thumb Silicon Valley community, I ask them about what's going on with their community specifically. And I think what interests me with regards to their feedback is the effects of the economy with regards to the artificial life community. I mean, certainly it's something we've talked about quite a bit in Biota Live. In terms of the Boston community, do you get a sense that there are issues associated with the slowdown in the economy that's also affecting the local artificial life community there?
I don't know if we've sort of pinpointed it as anything to do with the economy in particular, but the truth is everybody involved with Grey Thumb here in Boston, the organizers have all been very busy and professional and personal lives, and maybe that ties into the economy in some way. I'm not sure, but
I think you've all had, well, most of you at least have had children recently in the past 18 months as well.
Yeah, that's been a large factor of having less time to work on this stuff. But again, we do have we are lining up some people, and so we should be making an announcement soon in terms of resuming our meetings.
So I was contacted yesterday by Lee Spector with regards to the new work group that I've set up. And it was wonderful to be contacted by Lee because I think it's certainly in terms of the academic artificial life community, he together with you have done a lot of great work. But the thing that interests me about forming the work group is the artificial life in industry component is still quite heavily lacking. I've sent out a lot of feeler emails to people I know who do artificial life-related work in companies and in broader industries. And what interests me with regards to the Boston group specifically was that you did have some a number of people that came in that were either part of a startup culture or part of existing companies that used artificial life-related technology. Do you get a sense that, I guess Brian himself is an example of that. The stuff that he's doing with living play sets is fundamentally, a company and also artificial life-related in some regard. Can you characterize over the past 18 months if there have been any changes with regards to the startups? Do you see them moving more into kind of pharmaceutical-like research, or are they still coming from all different places together with a shared kind of artificial life interest?
Yeah, people really do come from all over the place, and the fact that we don't have a lot of quote-unquote artificial life in business, I don't know if that means that people don't actually use those techniques and those skills in business. I think a lot of people are working with simulations and work that would otherwise be characterized as artificial life, but done in a business setting, it usually doesn't get that title. So we maybe separate it or make it seem like it's a distinct thing. But, I would say that people really are applying those same kinds of techniques, artificial life techniques, in business every day, be it in, simulations or scientific research or in game development.
Certainly. And that's a large portion of the work group is actually defining that and looking at means of outreach and looking at ways to actually bring in people who are fundamentally doing artificial life-related work in industry into the broader artificial life community, and particularly perhaps realigning some of the academic artificial life development to actively assist the stuff that's going on in industry. So you've been developing Breve for, I guess, more than a decade now. Has it been more than a decade with regards to your Breve development?
Yeah, it's been just about that. If we were to look at the the first commits to of the source code, it would be about a decade. I mean, there was some stuff that came along even earlier than that, but of the code that's now Breve, I would say about a decade.
Yeah, so that's my reflection with regards to it. Is there any aspect of contemporary artificial life that really interests you, and would you consider doing another project? Would it be like Breve, or would it be something completely different?
Well, because Breve is a platform rather than a specific A-Life project, I find myself going back to it over and over again, even when I have new project ideas. So it doesn't seem like I sit down very often and say, here's a new idea, I'm going to start this new project from scratch. A lot of the times I'll get a new idea for something and say, okay, how can I build that into the simulation platform so that I'll always have access to that kind of thing again. And certainly looking at some of the features that have been added to Breve over the years, they've sort of followed that pattern. So there are all sorts of research interests that have ended up becoming sort of standard components of the software, and then mixed and matched in projects further down the line.
Certainly, and I think that's the nature of these long-term projects. I feel exactly the same way with Noble Ape. There have been things that have, come completely from left field that I've been able to integrate and implement into Noble Ape, and I think that's the intrinsic nature of these kind of longer-term projects. Your work with Breve was recently memorialized in the second edition of Maciej Komaczynski's book. I believe it's called Artificial Life in Software. Was that actually a new chapter, or was that some of your older papers that you've written on Breve?
No, that was a new chapter, and it was a pretty comprehensive overview of the simulation software and all of the significant work that we've done with it. So that was actually really nice, sort of bookend on Breve development there, sort of as a retrospective, perhaps, of the past 10 or so years of work and research that we've done with it.
It's an interesting book because I think when it first came out, it was probably about $60 or $70, and it's now more than $100. And I wasn't sure how much of it was actually new work or how much of it was reprinting. I did put to Maciej that he should consider actually doing volumes as a way of characterizing a lot of different artificial life developments rather than reprinting some of the old stuff and then adding what seemed like really interesting chapters such as yours. But in terms of, I know that you publish occasionally with Springer, or certainly I've found another Springer publication that contains some of your work, not Breve related, if I recall correctly. But do you get a sense of what contemporary academic publishing is like with regards to artificial life, and do you think there is a movement towards more a kind of textbook-style format, or do you think there's still room for abstract and novel research in artificial life academia?
Sure. Well, there's certainly, a couple of specific target journals and conferences, really which are about artificial life specifically, and, where artificial life can kind of stand on its own. But as I said, as I was describing before with industry, there are plenty of other sort of spokes coming out of artificial life where artificial life work can be published and can be relevant. It can be relevant in biology journals, and it can be relevant in all sorts of other machine learning journals. And so there's really, even though the field of artificial life itself feels like it might be the small, sometimes fringy thing, it really just plays into so many other fields and industries that I don't think there's a shortage of good places to get the word out or to publish papers on artificial life.
Yes, so it's interesting with the 40 years of Conway's life coming up, or at least the publication of Conway's life, that when you think of every aspect of science and even social science that has been touched by Conway's life as a modeling method and also a metaphor for contact and distribution. I mean, I think the idea of artificial life as being a fringe topic, with 40 years of Conway's life illustrating how a relatively simple idea in cellular automata can actually spread intellectually as well as algorithmically, really does negate that the thought that artificial life is only a small, tight ball of perhaps fringe ideas. So, Jon, we seem to be, every 18 months we seem to get together for this kind of chat. And what interests me, particularly with regards to the potential of things like Grey Thumb and also getting this work group together, is that in 18 months' time when we next talk, artificial life could be in a new and different place. You've mentioned the games industry in particular, and this is something that is raised periodically on Biota Live. Do you think there is potential for artificial life games in the next 18 months specifically?
Sure. So I was actually just speaking with Brian Peltonen about this last night. As you know, with Living Playsets, he's working actively on artificial life gaming. I'm certainly, one of the things that I'm tinkering around with in Breve is making the engine more applicable to games and gaming. But Brian brought up a really interesting point, which is that I don't know if you've played Farmville on Facebook, but it's this enormously popular social game. It's like a farming simulation. And if you really break it down and look at the components, it really truly is an artificial life kind of game. It's gamified artificial life. It's not actually an artificial life experiment to find out how these plants grow and evolve over time, but it really is a simulation kind of game that could easily be classified as artificial life. And there are a lot of other games out there like that. So it's not just that, there's the potential for artificial life games. It's that there are games out there which already really fulfill those the definitions of artificial life. Now, the people playing it right now probably aren't interested in some of the artificial life questions that we like to talk about, but I don't think it's a far stretch to get to those things either. If you were to add some kind of evolutionary dynamic, for example, to Farmville, I think that would be something that would really interest people, and they would get a kick out of looking at all the novel creations that they can come up with. Yes,
Farmville plus gene splicing would certainly be a very interesting social network game. I think the point with regards to interface is really critical here, and certainly looking at folk who've historically developed standalone artificial life simulations, which they may have put online, with regards to a means of getting artificial life out and in the general public and discussed, really need to seriously consider things like the iPhone and Facebook applications and all these things that really fundamentally have the network as part of it, as well as the humans tinkering with it. So I agree entirely. In fact, it's amazing that you raised Farmville, because I was actually going to raise that as another question to you following that line. But so, Brian is obviously thinking along this line, and there's obviously a community in Boston that, the origins of Grey Thumb is really from game developers anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, so Brian and Martin, who I think they were the two core founders, and Martin is now an AI programmer in the games industry, and Brian is sort of going down that path as well. So
certainly, yeah, certainly. So, characterizing these trends, it would be relatively easy for existing artificial life developers. In fact, this is Gerald Jung's continued narrative, is moving Darwin at Home into something that I don't know whether it will run on Facebook, but certainly will have the network playability component. Is the network the next thing for Breve?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's something I'm always thinking about and something I'm always working on to some extent, but I don't have the grand plan for it yet to be an EvoGrid style simulation running on multiple machines. So, as you say, having network interaction is certainly going to be a piece of it, but exactly what form that's going to take on, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem taking existing simulations, and I really this is the discussion with the EvoGrid, or what became Biota Eve as well, is taking existing simulations and then adding the network is one thing. The benefit that you have with Breve is, as you say, it's more like an operating system that is like a single particular simulation. So your integration of the network could be something that was relatively subtle, but simulators could build on in kind of power exponential methods as they added the network into their particular simulation. So I think you're in a different category in terms of adding the network versus, for example, someone such as Gerald or myself. But in terms of the kind of simulations that are built within Breve, I'm not sure when you last wrote a Breve simulation. I know you have a large user base that writes their own simulations too. Is there plans to release large libraries of all the potential Breve simulations? I know you include some libraries, or some originally Steve simulations, but will you start creating libraries of new submitted simulations as part of the distribution?
Yeah, that's something I've been giving some thought to as well. Beyond just the programming tasks of releasing a new version of Breve and doing work there, I think the Breve community site is really in need of an overhaul to add in some of that kind of functionality to let people share simulations more easily. Some of the networking aspects we just talked about might play into that as well. In general, people are pretty open with their Breve simulations, and certainly any of the research work we've done, we always open up the source code and make it available. But it's usually on a project page for the particular piece of research, and it's not necessarily something that we sort of package up together and release in one place. So I think there's probably a lot of room for improvement there. And again, I'll probably look at that in terms of a new Breve user community somewhere down the line.
Yeah, but something Dave Kerr is obviously more, his application in terms of actually creating the creatures in AI Planet obviously lends itself more to distribution. But the original experience of downloading Breve and loading the initial simulations is great in a kind of historical context of artificial life. But the modern simulations, the current users of Breve and the way in which they're using the simulation, which would add a kind of wow factor to perhaps people that are jaded with blockies or other simulations that perhaps have been historically packaged with Breve, I think would certainly yield another generation's interest in some regard. In terms of the graphics, in terms of the interface, in terms of the kind of reach in the complexity that can exist in the Breve engine, from people that have written simulations with Breve recently, do you have some particular stars that you'd like to talk about?
I've actually been a little bit, because I haven't been working on Breve recently, I haven't really been watching the community too much either, so I don't have any really good examples right now of what people are actively doing with it. As far as some of the other questions you raised about the graphics and what people are able to do with it, that's another one of the reasons that I'm really adding some of this gaming and gameplay functionality to the engine. It's just that people want to have more advanced and more sophisticated simulations now, so I'm working to add some of those features, which, among other things, will allow people to have more realistic simulations. Certainly.
Now, are you charging money for the iPhone app?
I am. It's a $3 app.
In terms of the potential of moving Breve into a small business, I mean, this seems to be the kind of perennial question that people ask artificial life developers is, where's the money, where's the business plan? Is this something that you're thinking about, or will Breve always be a hobby?
I don't know exactly what Breve will be, what it is now, and what it will be in the future. I can say that the Breve simulation environment will always be free. There might be ways to release aspects of it which are more entertainment-oriented and charge money for those. So, charging money for this iPhone app, or if I were to release a game, it might be a commercial endeavor. But as far as the core source and the simulation environment itself, that's absolutely going to be free.
Yeah, it's interesting, the potential for artificial life small business models. And certainly we had Steve Grand on recently, and also Tolkus, who was a chat room participant, talking about the robotics community and how if they're not creating, full-time small businesses, they're at least creating kind of hobby pocket change from their particular robotics developments. And it was an interesting model that we mapped back onto the artificial life community. And perhaps you're starting this with regards to Breve on the iPhone. I'm certainly going to be following this with great interest in terms of this as being a potential hobbyist pocket change model for the future. How long has the application actually been on the iTunes store?
It was just released today.
Wow. Okay, so this is almost a scoop. Well,
yes.
Jon, I'd like to invite you on a future Biota Live. In fact, any of the topics that we cover on Biota Live, getting your insight and experience would be a real pleasure. In terms of the time, I know it's 11 p.m. through to midnight on Friday. I'm certainly interested in doing it at other times too. Similarly with Brian, we've been missing Brian's insight in recent Biota Lives as well, and I hope the time is the only reason you and Brian haven't been able to participate. Do you think there's a need for a Saturday, I guess it'd probably be 11 or 12, kind of noontime Biota Live for you folk? Would that work out better?
That could be useful, or, again, if you can break from the live format every once in a while, then that would, I'm sure you'd be able to make a time for Brian and I to...
Certainly. Why don't we plan for something like that in the future? And if listeners want to submit questions to Jon and Brian for a future Biota Live, I think the whole perspective of potentially independent games, potentially integrated games, creating SDKs, this kind of stuff. I mean, this is an ongoing topic in the Biota podcasts, and it'd be wonderful to have you and Brian both on together to do the kind of jamming that you appear to have already done with him last night.
Sure, I think he and I would be pretty interested in that.
Terrific. Well, Jon, I'd like to thank you for this impromptu chat. I know we've been trying to plan it for a few weeks now, but the actual release on the iPhone store has certainly motivated basically getting this interview done. Do you have any final thoughts for the Biota Live listening audience?
I just want to give my thanks as always to you, Tom, for running the podcast and for being so great at rallying the A-Life community. I think it's really some great work you've been doing. And one final thing, if I could just give a plug for the app, I just want to tell people that they can go to artificial.com/BW for Breve Walker, and they'll find a link to the app there.
Terrific, Jon. And I'd like to thank you as well. I mean, I think you're an inspirational figure in the Artificial Life community. I know Larry Yeager and I corresponded with you recently, and Larry echoed this as well. I mean, I think of Larry as a historical figure in the Artificial Life community, but also very much a contemporary figure, and he certainly echoes this too with regards to praising your work with Breve and the continued work that you seem to be doing. It's going to be exciting times when we have Artificial Life running on the iPhone and potentially even Facebook too in the near future. I'll need to start that as a rumor.
Yeah, definitely. And it was actually great that you connected me with Larry, because he was a real inspiration behind Polyworld was a real inspiration behind Breve in the first place. So it was nice to get in contact with him and have that go full circle, that he was interested in what I had built there.
Well, I think Breve is a tool that's being used at universities currently, and certainly what I'm interested in doing with this work group is identifying actually which universities are using tools such as Breve specifically, so this information can go back to people such as yourself, and really it can go full circle in terms of getting the necessary information and details back to you and potentially even motivating future users and developers.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be very valuable information to have.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with you this evening, Jon, and I'd like to thank the folks for listening in as well.
All right. Thank you, Tom.